everyone. Welcome back. This is the second session. We have just finished our first session, and I think the first session has uh, set the baseline for our session. This time around, we're going to be focusing on the tertiary education. There are so many challenges before us with regards to the education at the school. And I mentioned about there is a tendency of finger pointing culture whereby you know saying that we are not providing the right kind of ingredients to propel our higher education. That can perhaps maybe be part of the issues that we need to address in our subsequent session. But before we move on any further, let's all give another round of applause to each and every one of our speakers over here. When Idayu was introducing one by one, it was only Dr. Ram got the clapping. So I was a bit jealous. He's the popular writer, by the way. Apa tajuk bukunya? Alien Mencari Cinta kan. Jadi popular lah among our many sisters in the halls. But please keep on, get the questions coming in. Even in the earlier, before we even begin, you can keep on sending questions on our YouTube channel. Ladies and gentlemen, before we start, I would like to share the an article written by our good rector, Tan Sri Zul, today. I'm not so sure which newspaper is it. Yeah. Can we have the microphone for Idayu, please? Is the article ready?
Okay. Thank you. Okay, thank you, Brother Said, for that. We are going to share one article, and like any other things, delayed gratification is good. So before we show that, I have another surprise as well. We are going to go some quiz and feedback from the audience.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Mentee thing.
Pardon me, yes.
All right, okay.
So just one quick 5 minutes. I would like to invite all of our brothers and sisters to open menti.com from any browser that you have. And then for the first question, we have the first code is 393-79337.
What is that? Yeah. You're preparing the mentee questions.
Give us 10 seconds. You can use that for meditation or prayers. Okay, so the first question is, should we have total continuous assessment instead of examinations by now? Yes or no, or do we still need both? Adakah kita memerlukan penilaian yang berterusan secara keseluruhan ataupun peperiksaan yang selalu berjalan mungkin setahun sekali? Contohnya. So we'll give 30 to 40 seconds for that.
Continuous assessment.
Okay, 15 seconds more before we move on to the next question. Okay, so 68% so far think that we still need both. Moving on to the next question, it's still the same code. Next question is online learning sufficient to support the development of values? Adakah pelaksanaan online learning cukup untuk menyokong pembangunan nilai dalam diri seseorang pelajar itu? Ya ataupun tidak?
It's not enough. Sufficient, insufficient.
Sufficient? Yes or tidak? No.
Baik, 30 saat lagi. All right, the results are as you can see at the screen or at my back. And let's go to the third question using the code 76994471. So the third question is the current model of university relevant to the challenges of the future? So while we wait to see it on the screen, the code is 76994471. Okay, this is interesting because from the start of the program, we already have some like stark difference, but this is quite close. Okay, this is something. Okay, 30 seconds left. Okay. 10 seconds left.
Balance.
Total balance. Balance.
All right, the competition is real. Just a bit of advertisement. IAM is the chair,
Okay.
the host of the UNESCO chair in future studies, so perhaps we could use this data or explore it further in the future. That is all, so we'll proceed. Thank you very much for facilitating this shift. So we'll show back the article written by Tan Sri Zulkifli. Back to you, Brother Syed.
Terima
Thank
kasih,
you.
Dayu. Even before the article, I would rather have the third question to be ongoing up until the end, because it seems like whoever is going to be the next Mohi is going to be in trouble. It's not a stable government, 50-50, you know. There is no clear majority there. I think that represents the crux of our debate for this session. Model itu relevan ke tak relevan, kan, to address future needs. Jadi, hopefully nanti Idayu, by the end of this session, we revisit. You see, it's 51-49. So, you know, you are neither here nor there. It's interesting. And I would like to share with everyone an article written by Professor Tan Sri Zul this morning. I haven't got a chance to read the article myself, but maybe we should spend some time after this to read. It's about Cikgu Fadli, the Cikgu Fadli phenomena. Yeah. Okay. So maybe OCAP can share the article later on again. So as mentioned in the last questionnaire on Mentimeter, I think that, as I mentioned, represents the crux, given the baseline being debated in the earlier session. So the structure of this second session is more or less the same. The first round, every speakers, every debaters. Well, Prof. Murad, Zul Haimi, the earlier debater, he said it's not even a debate because everybody is on the same mazhab, he said. Nevertheless, it's good for us to share our viewpoints. 7 minutes for the first round. And again, to provide some context to the debate, the premise for the second session is academic culture in how our higher education has failed to fulfill national aspirations due to the absence of real autonomy. budaya akademia di peringkat pendidikan tinggi gagal memenuhi aspirasi negara kerana tiadanya autonomi sebenar. The medium for the second session is also bilingual so that the content will resonate right down to the grassroots. So 7 minutes, I would like to invite Prof. Murad.
Thank you. Thank you, Syed. Assalamualaikum. Yeah. I'd like to, first of all, acknowledge the boxes in front of us. I think there's a lot of meaning to the words used on the boxes. Climate action is one of them, very visible. Quality education, partnership. All these lead to the questioning of the ethics and the ethos of the university. One thing which I want to relate is what has not been discussed this morning. I want to pick up from there. I'm exercising my autonomy on this stage. Perhaps I will delve on that topic for half the session or half the time given. People talking about schools, the various approaches towards school education, whether we feel or not. But the elephant in the room, perhaps they are addressing the many elephants, but the elephant in the room when we talk about education is prejudice. No country in the world has managed through its education system, through its school system, to eliminate prejudice. Prejudice is learned. Prejudice comes from nation building. Prejudice comes from the family. Prejudice comes from the schools, from friends, from the environment, from dominant ideology. So one of the things that schools need to do is to unlearn the prejudice, to dismantle the prejudice. And that is important with regard to countries like Malaysia, where when you talk about prejudice, we may refer to the diversity or the differences or in terms of ethnic and culture and religion. So prejudice is critical in terms of how we reflect in our education system. Now, when I talk about prejudice, it's not that it is negative. Prejudice is also positive. It is a given. If we don't have that value of prejudice, we'll receive everything and we'll collapse physically and mentally and intellectually. So prejudice is a safety net in which we would not just accept anything without being critical. But this is where I think the complexities come in. There are many ways to look at it. Education is a discourse full of contradictions. We cannot resolve things. And when you talk about any nation, for example, they have failed and they have succeeded. And each nation would develop its school system based on its national ethos. The context of any falsafah pendidikan negara is the falsafah negara itself. So I think this is where we need to move forward, or rather to look back at how we contextualize falsafah pendidikan within the context of the nation state, mainstream values and mainstream ideology. We have lost our mainstream in 2018, one mainstream, the mainstream that has ruled the country for 60 years. We lost that, or rather it was disrupted in 2018 after May 9. And since then, different governments have made efforts to resurrect the national mainstream, but it is still in disarray. And this is where it affects the school system. Now, it also affects the university. When you talk about the future of the university, the future is now. We've planned the ethos of the university over the last, 40, 50 years. And in that sense, we have to question, what do we mean by autonomy? What kinds of autonomy are we talking about in terms of the running of the university, the proper functioning of the university? I'd like to go back to the 4 fundamental functions of an academic. One is teaching and supervision. Don't we have autonomy for teaching and supervision? In other words, each lecturer or each academic is an authority in himself or herself. So in that sense, we need to reevaluate the autonomy in teaching. Second is research. Who determines what we do? Is there a big brother in the country or the Ministry of Higher Education to determine what kind of research that we need to do? Of course, there are national imperatives, research for the national interest. They also research for our own interest. In other words, when we talk about the university, it is an organized anarchy, whereby the systems or the subsystems of the university need not be congruent with one another. Our values may be different from the Vice Chancellor. Each of us in the faculty may be different. We may not see eye to eye, or rather we not see a similar objective with the Dean. So this is perhaps one of the early philosophies of the university. The university should not necessarily conform to the nation. The university should not necessarily conform to other ideologies. But what the university must conform to are values of humanity. And this is where I think we should move forward. Thank you.
I'm not supposed to comment, but I have to say this out loud before we move on. I think the argument of our good professor here saying that the backbone of our crisis in our higher education is prejudice is so profound. I've heard you articulating, debating, deliberating about this beforehand, but to put it in the context of education, to me, because earlier on I mentioned that I think the problem in Malaysia is where we have education becoming a political commodity. That in itself is a prejudice. Therefore, whoever becomes the next Minister of Higher Education have to address this. Because whatever is being instituted later on will be seen as representing certain political divide. And that in itself is another prejudice. The absence of trust in the society at large. When you mentioned about prejudice, I really felt like the roof was falling on my head just now. I think that note going to resonate in my memory if I don't have amnesia for the rest of my life. So let's move on to Prof. Ainul Mazia. 7 minutes. Can we have the microphone, please? Okay kah? Cuba terus bercakap. Kita ada masalah dengan mikrofon. Sebentar, kita cuba. Bantu saya. Prof punya mikrofon. Dr. Ramzah punya pun tak juga.
Hello.
Okay.
Mine is okay.
Boleh ya? Tidak. Prof Ainul punya. Boleh berkongsi dengan Prof Dr. Ram punya sebentar?
Boleh.
Tarik saja. Sorry. Bukan bertukar tempat. Sementara OCAP bantu saya untuk.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim.
Okay.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi
Yeah.
wabarakatuh.
You can still do campaign. Now you have your voice.
First of all, I think I would like to congratulate IUM, Kuliah of Education, and my colleagues who have successfully organized this, because I think this is leading the way. We've always been engaged in debates, but debates are normally, the objective has always been to have a platform to express our differences in order to argue. But when we have Edu-Action, I hope, and I'm sure it will be such, that this is a platform for us to argue in order to come up with something that will give us the information that we will make informed decision for the betterment of education in this country, right? Because so we need this platform in order to argue in such that we will be all informed, all the questions will come in, and then we hope to come up with something that will be good for the nation. So when Brother Said gave the premise just now, so I saw three things in the scenario. Okay? The national aspirations not being met due to academic culture, so something wrong, or the existing academic culture is not working because there's the lack of real autonomy. So I think I have been with this university for, this month I celebrate my 33 years as a staff at IUM. And I am also a product of higher education. I've been working in higher education in Malaysia. I think we have to give credit to the country that at least some of the aspiration, when we look at the national education philosophy and the blueprint, there's some of the aspirations that we have achieved. For example, during my time in the 1980s, there was no avenue for TVET in Malaysia. Look at where TVET is in Malaysia. But I think if you look at the blueprint and the falsafah pendidikan, so we see two aspirations for the country. One is the kemenjadian individu, individual development, because these are the people who are going to function in our society. And the falsafah pendidikan beautifully indicate where these individuals are going to be. First, keluarga at home. So they've got to be functional, effective, good individual at home. Next is the society and wherever they work, yeah, in profession. So that's one part of the aspiration. But we also have the aspiration in terms of the society and the industry. Right? So I think where Brother Said is trying to incite us to talk about is where has it gone wrong? And I think we have to reflect on the kemenjadian individu. Right? The kemenjadian individu in terms of functional people in the society, and we're saying that because we don't have the autonomy at the university, so therefore we do not give attention to kemenjadian of our students. Now, is that true? Okay. I think when we talk about lack of autonomy, we've done so much in terms of regulating higher education because we want quality. So therefore, we have the MQA, we have all sorts of agencies to ensure that there is accountability, quality, and so and so. But when we have all those things, that's where the enablers, the lecturers, the teachers are restricted in terms of what we need to do. And I think in terms of the culture now, we lack the culture of professionalism as well as academic. Say for example, okay, all programs have got program learning outcomes and program and course learning outcomes. How much autonomy do we have as lecturers to change your course learning outcome after the pandemic? For example, yeah, because I'm from the Kuliah of Education, I feel that I think 70% of the courses should bring the students to the, what do you call that, the rumah, the B40 places where you have children, because the nation now is suffering, is going through learning loss of children in school because of the 2.5 years of school closure and all those things. So all the fingers are pointing to the teachers to do wonders with the learning loss in school. But we have here university students who hold the academic, who can actually help. But our students are in the classroom, okay? Because we have to abide by the learning outcomes. And we cannot change the learning outcome because there are so many guardian angels of the learning outcomes that changes cannot be made. So we are not out there to address the real issue and go hand in hand with the teachers in school to handle this. Okay? And the other aspect of, we talk about autonomy, is probably the academic autonomy. How many of us lecturers actually think of our students first before what we have to do for the university? How many of us think about, my area of expertise is in this area, for example, in assessment. Okay. So what is it that I want to make sure that my area of expertise, when I go, all my students will carry that area of expertise in order to benefit the people in their society. Okay. But I don't have time to think about this because I've got my KPI to meet, and I've got my publications to meet, and I've got all sorts of other things. That's for the institution. Okay. So I think that's the scenario where we talk about our hands are tied as academicians in order to do the right thing for students, in order for them to be the functional people in the society. And and then I suppose the last thing in terms of academic culture is also where I think, because of all our hands are tied, we also lack collegiality. I will work alone because I'm only concerned with my KPI. I have to be concerned with my KPI because I've got my perut nasi to jaga, and I've got, career path to look after. So when I think of my career path, so I only think of myself. So I have never worked, after 33 years in this university, for example, I've never worked with people from Kuliah of Architecture. I've never brought my students to work together with the Kuliah of Architecture students. I have thought of it. I've thought of doing something with the sand that is blocking the river that faces Kuliah of Education and Human Science. But I've never got the chance to actually do something with the students in the other Kuliah to do something with the river. Because I'm very, very tight and very concerned with my KPI and all the things that I need to do for the institution and also for my career development. So I think that's where I stop.
Yeah, talking about KPI, there is a huge resemblance with our sister Mutmainnah mentioned about cikgu-cikgu, they have limitations, more or less about the same. Yeah, I'm giving the opportunity for Dr. Ramzah to adjust a bit. Maaf lah Dr. Ram, So 7 minutes please, Dr. Ramzah.
Hello.
Yeah.
Okay. Assalamualaikum dan selamat pagi semua. Okay. Thank you so much.
Sama-sama.
Tuan Syed, tadi you said that probably the previous session that would be the baseline for our discussion.
Is it not?
So if
Okay.
if we take that as a baseline, then we don't have anything to discuss now because based on discussion just now kan kita tengok kan there are so many problems at the fundamental level kan. Okay. So kalau keruh air di hulu, keruhlah sampai ke muara. That is what they said.
Yeah.
But I don't believe in we are the product of our past. I don't believe in that. I think throughout our journey, at any point in time we can change the discourse. So sebab itulah saya rasa ini masih lagi relevan untuk didebatkan lah. Now, if we are talking about pendidikan peringkat tinggi gagal menggalas aspirasi negara, that is a very strong statement lah. That is a very strong statement. Satu kenyataan yang agak berat. So I'm kind of probably there are some certain aspect that we fail, but seperti kata sahabat saya tadi, yang lain-lain tu kan kita ada banyak juga kejayaan. So we will qualify that. But my personal opinion is we still have an issues. So it is not so much about kegagalan lah, itu berat sangat lah, tapi we have some issues. Now, kita lihat apakah fungsi pendidikan tinggi dalam menggalas aspirasi negara ada 4. Yang pertama modal insan. Okay, modal insan. I think the problem is sometimes is because the expectation. Everybody out there, dia kata universiti ini mesti menghasilkan orang yang ada kemahiran teknikal untuk besaran kerja. Juga mempunyai karakter yang baik untuk menjadi pendinding kepada negara. So if we have a problem of unemployment, or we have problem with graduate, buat perkara yang tidak senonoh, semuanya tuding pada university. So we are We are expected to provide everything. Come on. How long you are going to be in the university? 14 tahun, 15 tahun? Tidak. It is only 3 or 4 years, kan? 3 or 4 years. And you expect us to do that? Kan? What happened to the entire yang hidup-hidup kita yang panjang itu? Tapi kita di university ni, kita ni malang. Because we are the last entity in that education value chain. So they blame everything on us. So I think the problem is, we know what we want to do. Saya selalu baca, saya punya idol di sana, Tan Sri Zul. Saya rasa dia ada wawasan what we should do for our graduate di university ini. Menjadikan mereka manusia. Tapi, tu sabotage tu. Inilah masalah. Okay. Tapi that is the problem lah kan. Sebab bila di sana tu dia expect us macam-macam. Okay, come on. You want us to do the character building ataupun employment ataupun skill, purely on skills kan. Kan sebab ini this is only 3 or 4 years kan. What about the roles of industry? Adakah industri dia perlu perfect dari segi kemahiran, diorang tu menadah sahaja? They also have the responsibility to train. We provide the basic. Macam mana dengan media massa, institusi keluarga dan sebagainya in terms of character building. So that is the issue. Ada setengah kita perlu blame, tapi I think the expectation is unrealistic. And now kementerian sendiri pun terbawa-bawa dengan expectation yang tidak realistik itu, dan memanglah kita semua bercempara di sini kan. You all ni mau buat apa dalam 2-3 tahun, dalam 3-4 tahun ni kan? Bukannya 40 tahun, kalau dibagi 40 tahun, yes. I can make sure the graduate kemahiran bagus dan juga mempunyai karakter yang baik. Second, dari segi membangunkan industri, yes. Kita universiti ini adalah institusi untuk science technology and we nurture that and we transfer to that industry. Of course, saya tahu ada ramai pensyarah yang bising. Dia cakap kita ni mendidik lagi, buat itu lagi, and now you expect us to be the industry driver, that is just too much kan. Tapi sebagai mantan TKSU Sains dan Teknologi, actually kita akademia, we don't have the privilege to have that kind of mentality lah. You know why? Sebab kita tidak sama dengan Korea. Korea 80% daripada saintis dan teknologi ada dalam industri. Kita 80% ada di university. So takkanlah kita ni mengajar sahaja. We have to contribute. We have to contribute. Tapi yes, we have a point bila kita kata we cannot contribute because the system is not facilitating us, it's not encouraging us. Ada orang buat innovation teknologi apa semua, lepas tu apa pengiktirafan, it is all about Q1 ranking juga, Q1 journal juga akhirnya kan. Kemudian how about homegrown technology? Mati-mati semua tahu pensyarah. Saya tahu lah, I'm the former TNC for penyelidikan dan inovasi. I know how hard my researcher work on fundamental and try to make it apply kan. Do we have the policy in trying to support homegrown technology? Tiada. Saya tahulah sebab saya ada di Kementerian Pendidikan dan juga di MOSTI. So that is also the issue. Again, unrealistic expectation. But yes, I agree. We should play the roles of memacu industry because 80% of scientists and technology are in the university ecosystem. But we need the support. Now, yang ketiga adalah isu tentang tentang feeding the policy maker. Ya betul. We are the brain of the negara lah kan. We should feed the policy making. Tapi itulah kita tidak banyak feed polishing dia sus adalah kan. So itu juga adalah masuk. Saya tahu Tan Sri Zul selalu membebel tentang ini. Tapi masih ramai pemimpin kita yang tidak insaf kan. Now, isu dia. Adakah ini disebabkan oleh tiada otonomi di universiti? No. Yang ini I disagree. One side. Saya rasa it's not about tiada otonomi di universiti, it is more about no facilitation, no dana, dan yang paling penting, no leadership in the university. Tahukah anda bahawa when it comes to our core business, research and academic, Senat adalah merupakan kuasa yang paling tinggi. Even LPU, they cannot overrule Senat punya keputusan. Even apatah lagi kementerian or menteri, nobody can overrule Senat punya keputusan. That is the highest authority for you the university. So who say that we don't have autonomy? The only problem is we don't have the leadership that we need to drive and make make sure that we take that opportunity. So itu saya punya pandangan lah. Terima kasih.
Okay. If we were to extend Dr. Ramza's argument, the tail end of the argument will fall down onto prejudice issues. But never mind, we'll move on to Mrs. Prabhasundram. The floor is yours.
Thank
7
you.
minutes, please.
Thank you. Salam sejahtera, everyone, and thank you for inviting me. So perhaps let me start with definitions, right? So we talk about autonomy and autonomy of institutions and academic autonomy. What do we understand autonomy to be? Now, this is the premise that you stated earlier, that this debate is based on. It's not a problem only faced in Malaysia. It's everywhere. So we can't say that in a particular country, all the universities are autonomous. Absolute autonomy is also absolute chaos. So we cannot have that kind of situation. We do have, institutions in Malaysia do have a degree of autonomy. The question is, where does that autonomy lie, right? So does it lie in the institution's governance? Does it lie in how they design and deliver the curriculum? Their courses, can they pick and choose their courses? Does it lie in how they choose the senior management and the people who actually manage the institutions? Because at the end of the day, an institution is only as good as its players and the play, right? And that's what the students need. They need good players in the university, and they need that good play so that they can go out and become good contributing members of the society and community. So can universities choose which students they want to bring in? Can they choose to only bring in underprivileged students? Can they choose to only bring in top creme de la creme students? That's the kind of peeling back of layers we need to think about when you talk about autonomy. What autonomy are we discussing? Are we discussing autonomy in hiring and firing? Are we discussing autonomy in senior management? At the end of the day, we need to look at good governance, good consultation. If the government is granting a level of autonomy or is granting complete autonomy, again, we need to look at how is that being translated into practice. Is it a top-down instruction that you need to do this, that, or the other? Or is it a consultative process with the universities looking at how the universities keep making themselves relevant now with the pandemic, now with moving forward in the future of work, in the different kind of skills that students actually need to survive as a globally competitive, employable person out there in the market. Are universities keeping themselves ahead of the game? Are academics keeping themselves ahead of the game to be out there as thought leaders and experts and centers of excellence in their own disciplines? So all of this requires a consultative process. So maybe is that what we lack? I don't have the answers. I'm just throwing these questions out here because I think the idea today is for us to think about what we want from this, what we want from university having autonomy. If, for example, if all universities have complete autonomy, are students still going to come to Malaysia as an education hub? Are they going to question the credibility of what we offer in our higher education institutions if we have zero framework actually regulating this? Or is what we need frameworks that can assist and help universities move themselves up and put ourselves out there in terms of ranking, in terms of academic rigor, in terms of research, in terms of teaching and learning excellence, and in terms of graduate output of employability? What are the various things we want from this? Autonomy is a privilege as well as a responsibility. It's not a buzzword. It's not fashionable to say that, oh, we are a completely autonomous institutions. It comes with huge responsibility and a huge amount of good governance on how the university can make that work. And how that governance comes, I guess, is the crux of it, right? Are we talking about only governance within the institutions? Or are we talking about governance that takes into consideration the academics input, a governance that takes into consideration the students' input, and the governance of the university that takes into consideration the national aspirations and the national input? So I think I will end there and just put these questions out there that we can continue the discussions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Prabha. But now we're moving on to our second round, which is more or less Q&A, basically. You can comment on each other's pointers and ideas just now. But before we straight away move on to our second round, I would like to just share Prof. Akmal's comment on our YouTube channel. Dia kata pendidikan negara kena duduk di bawah Suruhanjaya Diraja. Tak adalah kejap-kejap berubah ikut menteri dan KSU. Tu komen Prof. Akmal lah. Menarik pandangan itu, mungkin boleh juga diberikan komen. But for the second round, let's go back to the third questionnaire just now about model. Because I was, just a small anecdote, I was in a curriculum debate with the Ministry of Education, I think a month ago, and we talk about the changing landscape of the whole world globally. You know, nobody is really sure what's going to happen in the next 3 months. And, you know, the officers from the ministry told back the argument towards me, you know, industry must tell us what do you need. Then I would say, we don't even know whether we're going to survive in the next 6 months. So how can we build a model to deal with such kind of uncertainty while having all these challenges? This will be my question to everyone for the next session. Vis-a-vis trying to address prejudices, given the predicament that we're in, the kind of value system, the kind of, you know, we talk about autonomy, but every now and then we keep on hearing that what we have here is not real autonomy, but a pseudo-autonomy. Some of the politicians, they say you do have freedom of speech, but not after speech. The political implications, the kind of, you know, treatment that you're going to get, that in itself impedes creativity, effort, and passion. So again, likewise, like what I did in the first session, let's address the elephant in the room. Prof. Murad.
I don't think much of whether there is autonomy or the lack of it in Malaysia. I think it's an overrated issue. We can't blame the ministry. We can't blame the government. When we are at university, as I've said, I like to continue the other two functions. I said, teaching, first one, second, research, third is publication. Nobody controls or regulates on what we publish, how we publish, where we publish, except for the KPIs, you know, the league tables. Nobody controls on the research topic, except for funding. So when you talk about autonomy, there are several layers that we have to be fair to. Where funding is concerned, we don't have autonomy, or we have limited autonomy. This is normal in any university in the world, private or public, especially public universities. So where funding is concerned, it is the purview of the ministry or higher authority. But where the production and reproduction of knowledge is concerned, the onus is on the university. The onus is on every academic. The onus is that each academic must empower themselves. Each academic must empower himself. Each rector and vice chancellor must empower themselves. The thing is that sometimes I've never been a university administrator. I have not worked in the ministry. The highest post which I've held in the various universities is a department head. I've not even been the dean. I've not experienced being the decan, where I control funding and so on. So here, when we talk about autonomy, we are talking about the autonomy of knowledge, the autonomy of creating new knowledge. Who controls? Nobody controls. The ministry, the government can advise us, can create a program. Yes, there's a certain priority. But then the university, as I've said, is an organized anarchy. Each individual academic interest is his own, as long as there's no destructive or negative value to destroy the world. But the point here is that we are free. There's a spirit of inquiry in Malaysia and in other universities as well, except perhaps for in communist countries. But all other countries, academics are free to create knowledge, reproduce knowledge, to extend whatever they have. So this is the autonomy that we have. And in Malaysia, we have the autonomy. So also in other parts of the world. The other one which I want to say is that universities are not industries. Universities are not the market. If we think that we have to be on par with the industry, then it's the industry. The university is separate. The university and industry are two incompatible institutions. We have to acknowledge that. Vice chancellors have to acknowledge that. The minister have to acknowledge that. Lecturers, academics have to acknowledge that. It's not that we always think of the industry. The industry must be the baggage. The industry must be the background. No. And actually, in all good universities, to me, ideally, there may be only three faculties: Faculty of Arts, Faculty of Science, and Faculty of Medicine and other professional. And that's it. Okay, so that's it. Yeah.
Okay. Prof, I know your microphone is already online.
Okay.
But if I may extend a bit the question, yeah, boleh cuba? I think it's okay.
Assalamualaikum.
Yeah, now it's good. Talking about autonomy and the model that we should emulate when you are dealing with uncertainties. Do rectors or the vice chancellors have the liberty to design the content, to address expectations from the industries, for instance, and expectations from the policymakers, the numbers of students in respective fields? How do you deal with that when you come to the period of time when nobody is certain of what's going to happen next? Mismatch between industry's expectation. This has been largely debated across all public forums in FIRS.
Thank you. For the second round, I think I tend to agree with the other speakers in terms of giving so much emphasis or pointing the finger at autonomy. But I think we should also reflect on the academic culture. And academic culture can change. The result of the survey, the last question, is actually an indication of how we are not so much open to change because we are 50-50 in terms of, staying as we are or do robust changes to meet the current changes in the society and also in our environment. And I think the pandemic actually is hikmah, because after the pandemic and during the pandemic, we realize, we wake up one day and tell ourselves that there are so many things that we have to adapt to, and there are so many things that we have to do changes to. And, in education, particularly in education. And when you asked just now, whether the rector, governance can actually have the authority to do the changes. I think it is imperative to actually change the academic culture so that we are open to change, and particularly to meet the current demands of all the disruptive things that are happening in our society. Okay? From the pandemic to all this social media thing and the digital things, also in one way they are positive, but in another way they are also disruptive to the society. So how do we, higher institution, we're dealing with adults. They are already half foot in the society. So how is it that we make sure that with all these changes and all these new things that we have to prepare the young people to be functional and effective in the society, is that probably we have to revisit our academic culture. So what is it, for example, courses that are relevant now? What are the values that they must have? Volunteerism must be in the top 3. Empathy is also in the top 3 value that all adults must have, because we have seen during the pandemic that we need everybody to, be on the road to help people and do all those things. But how many of our students actually were out there? Okay? So I think, academic culture has to change, may take time, and governance is very important because we lead the way, and we should be leading the way. And, in any organization, top-down does work. But because with the pandemic, everybody experienced the need. So this is a good time to revisit, and this is a good time to do the changes that are necessary. So that's where I stop.
Yeah, Prof. Arnold, where there is crisis, there is opportunity. But I've heard those phrases since 98 until now. We have always failed to capitalize on whatever crisis that comes before us. Datuk Dr. Ramzah, talking about model, I think model should be envisioned at the higher level. Perhaps maybe, as I mentioned, does all vice chancellors and rectors have the liberty in designing what needs to be taught in a particular university? I think all those data, all those design, the compass must be provided by the policymakers. For an instance, all the unicorn companies nowadays, they are not looking at degrees anymore. Facebook, Google, dia dah bagi tahu, dia kata, as long as you can solve this problem, you know the programming, I'll rope you in. And suddenly now over here, as you rightfully mentioned, you need 4 years to study what degree of programming or whatnot. And suddenly you come into the market, no more jobs for you because all those professional certificate gives the answer to the market needs. So when you talk about model, let's say we have the liberty to debunk whatever there is right now. Because now you also have an Indian guy, Bangladeshi guy coming up with a different kind of university bigger than Harvard. Everything is online, not being taught by professors, but those experts in the field themselves, the engineers, and they give certification. You know, how do you deal with these new realities? Dato', sila.
Okay, hello, boleh eh? Okay, I would like to still stick to my previous punya stand lah. For me, the model now is already okay when it comes to autonomy. It is just a matter of we need a deeper understanding of it and how to operationalize it. Siapa kata kita tidak ada authority? Authority apa? Yes, of course, admin in terms of admin and governance, pelantikan apa semua untuk jawatan tinggi. Kita punya top kuasa besar tu, they are still, you know, they still have hand on that. But when it comes to our core business, research and also academics, kan? Of course, we have the autonomy to design what program we should introduce, what faculty we should ni apa semua tu. Kita boleh dapat arahan daripada kementerian, yes. Tapi we cannot introduce any program, any faculty without going through Senate. So that is where our kuasa lies lah kan. Mengubah semua yang keperluan daripada MQA apa semua tu, dia cuma ada basic requirement. If we think that the need to change is there, you go to Senate. Sama juga dengan kelulusan masuk apa semua. We have done that in UMS. UMS kan banyak B40 apa semua, especially in terms of cutting point untuk masuk. We do it at Senate. Kan? Sebab if Senate approve it, and then that it is the highest authority when it comes to core business of the university. I'm talking about academic. Of course, management, admin apa semua tu ya daripada sana, dan orang selalu komplain, oh kementerian ini tidak campur tangan dalam pemilihan pentadbiran apa semua dan sebagainya. But in my opinion, that is very subjective lah. For me, that is something yang in our university, I don't think that we really need. As our friend Puan Prabha correctly said that autonomy, too much autonomy can be toxic to the organization kan. Bising-bising semua yang grassroots tu, pemilihan naib chancellor ke atau apa semua tu tidak okey dan sebagainya. But when they are given the opportunity untuk pilih ketua program lah, ketua unit lah apa semua, sama juga kan. You get what I mean? So what I'm trying to say here is, for me as a university, we really want to function. The only autonomy that we need is our autonomy to set the direction of our core business, which is the academic and research. And at the moment, we have that. Tapi kenapa ramai orang takut untuk menggunakan itu? Sebab there are not many vice chancellors yang willing to go against and really want to use that. So kalau dalam ramai-ramai itu kan semua yang yes man itu susah sikit lah. Tapi kalau semua vice chancellor, we really go for senate, inilah senate kita apa semua, I don't think that kementerian pun because it is also bait to the kementerian if they keep saying that okay memang diorang boleh veto. In principle, kementerian boleh veto apa saja termasuk Senat, but they are not going to do that banyak kali kan. Kadang-kadang kita sendiri yang buat. I haven't seen any decision in UMS yang kita kata di veto daripada atas kalau bukan melalui Senat. Eventually, Senat they give in because of the pressure. But if you really stick to that, you can actually, nobody can actually challenge you. That is the power of Senat. Sebab universiti sebenarnya adalah institusi yang sangat terhormat and you should be proud of. Inilah. Last kali sikit lagi kita punya masalah ni kita selalu banding dengan sekolah tu. Ekosistem sekolah lain dengan universiti. Sekolah memang they don't have that autonomy. And that is the origin of all our problem. If we empower the school how to translate diorang punya kurikulum yang tidak sesuai untuk pedagogi mengikut luar bandar Sabah dan Sarawak tu, if we empower them, giving them the autonomy, mungkin banyak masalah akan selesai. Di peringkat sekolah tidak ada. Di universiti we have that through Senat. Thank you.
Mungkin Datuk, pelantikan members of the Senate. Itu kalau nanti diulas dalam pusingan berikutnya lah, saya nak beri Datuk ruang itu. But moving on to Mrs. Prabha, still
Universiti yang lantik Senat, bukannya kementerian
swasta,
pun.
bagaimana swasta melakukannya dan bagaimana IPTA melakukannya untuk cut off daripada political influence, let's say, if you really talk about autonomy. Itu nantilah pusingan berikutnya. Tapi kepada Mrs. Prabha terlebih dahulu, as you aptly said, the issue that we are facing today in our higher education is not uniquely Malaysian problems. It's global. When it comes to model, how do you see the Ivy Leagues? How do they respond to the changes? And the changes that we are facing now is really fundamental. Whatever we learn in the next 8 months, it's obsolete if you talk about all those hands-on knowledge, the TVET. Should we not perhaps maybe divide the whole model into two? Because it seems like we are trapped between humanities, human development, and the market needs. And we put everything all into one same basket, which is the higher education. Perhaps maybe that's the kind of different perspective that we need to deal with. How do you see the globally education, especially among the Ivy Leagues, how do they respond to such challenges?
Well, I think, as I stated earlier, this is not unique to Malaysia. So all institutions are now trying to respond to these challenges. And some are doing it better than others. One of the things we do as part of my work at the British Council is we are trying to bring institutions together to learn from each other and to learn best practices. Malaysian institutions have so much to offer in terms of where we are at. UK institutions might be good in some things, we might be good in some things. When we sit together and we discuss, we can find innovative solutions in a mutually beneficial way on how perhaps we can address some of this. You talk about employability and industry, the mismatch. This is a conversation that has been going on for years. So I used to work in UKM in their industry liaison office many, many years ago. And we had numerous meetings, MOHE, industry, and the question is always, it's your job or it's your job. Universities say industry should tell us, industries say universities are not listening to us. It's been going on for years. But where is the disconnect? It's not that universities are not listening and it's not that industries are not telling, but obviously something is getting lost in that translation of how this thing is being operationalized, isn't it? So I remember when I was at UKM, we set up industry advisory boards at every faculty and at institutional level. We set up a program, Sangkutan Industry for academics, hoping that they'll come back after being attached to industry to make them more relevant. So we don't have academics who have just come through academia and who are now teaching something which is only relevant to academia but not relevant anymore to industry. Now, I'm probably, and then we had latihan industry, obviously. We made it compulsory in UKM those days for latihan industry across whatever discipline. Even if you're learning geography, you have to go for a compulsory latihan industry. Now, I have since left many years ago, public university sector, but I cannot believe that, it has not moved along. I'm sure it has moved along, but it's a question of how well or not it's being done and how much is it being accepted. Obviously now things have changed even further with the pandemic. the kind of skills that students need have even changed. You talk about Ivy League and UK universities, employability is a huge concern. How are they going to actually look at it? One of the things that they're looking at, if you remember, UK came out with the Turing scheme last year, and now they're in the second cycle of the Turing scheme. Turing scheme is a mobility scheme to send UK students to everywhere in the world for study attachment as well as workplace attachment. Because that's one of the ways the government and the university responded to the fact that why are people not employing their students? They need the global outlook. If UK only sits in UK and they never have experience anywhere else, how will they be employable? So at the end of the day, we need to listen. There needs to be a consultative process. And yes, in answer to the first question, I think a lot of it depends on our senior most leadership in the universities. Are they brave enough to take that first step? Are they brave enough to innovate, to reach out, to create these linkages and partnerships, and to collectively make that change, voice these concerns and make that change, and present this change to MOHE and MQA and everyone else who actually can make those policy changes.
Yeah, thank you. We're now in the third segment. I would like to offer members of the floor, silakan Q&A, boleh maju terus ke mikrofon yang disediakan, bertanyakan soalan, memberikan pandangan. Selain daripada komen-komen yang sedang diberikan, ada yang meminta, okey, ada yang meminta untuk diadakan sambung sesi ini, Tan Sri. Dia kata libatkan KPM, KPT, Kesatuan Guru dan PIBG. Dah. Tan Sri tak bertanding kan? Okeylah. Bolehlah. Saya tak tahu, nomination list on the 5th. We never know kan. Tengok-tengok Datuk Ramzah, ini popular candidate in Sabah. You never know. Nevertheless, okay, soalan writing exam practicals is okay. Ya, masih lagi, silakan. Soalan daripada audience berkait tentang pendidikan tinggi. Soalan saya kepada semua panelis ya, berkait tentang cabaran ini. Dr. Ramzah sudah menyatakan tentang ia harus berpaksi kepada pentadbir, Senat. We are now pointing at the Senate. If that's the case, then perhaps maybe we're having a problem with the quality of the Senate members. How do we address this, Prof. Murad?
Well, there have been many comments. Senate members are a reflection of the university, a reflection of the academic body of the university, a reflection of the, I would say, the intellectual and epistemological competence of the professors. So it's a very fundamental problem in terms of how we recruit academics and how professors are appointed. And this is another thing which I want to raise. The assessors for the appointment of professors. And these assessors or these reviewers will be influenced by certain factors that, no, they have to be objective, but then they're influenced by what the professors do or do not do in the context of perhaps being biased toward the industry and so on. I think we have been overrating the industry and the market. I think the universities are universities. The function of the universities is to build knowledge. Why we come to the university is we want to be more intelligent, as Kwasi said, told his students 40 years back. And the function of the university is not like Google. We cannot Googleize universities. There may be micro credentials, whatever. The universities can take it up, and Google can take it up, but we cannot lose sight of our fundamental function, that is to provide knowledge, to provide capacity to reason and rationalize and to think. And this is what Google doesn't provide us. Also, another important thing is that these new technologies, the concern that you have for the different model of university, they have this tendency to imperialize. Right. And this happens over the last 500 years. I'm not talking about colonialism, I'm talking about the new imperialism, which is artificial intelligence and technologies, which is biased toward a certain culture and certain civilization. And this is where professors will have to be alert.
Okay.
And again, the quality to me, the quality of the Senate or the professors would be dependent on how they are alert to the identity. Because when we learn, what is the function of learning is to know ourselves.
Okay.
And if we lend ourselves to new technologies and like Google and the new AI, then we lose our identity. This is again another problem with regard to universities and schools. First, the teaching of schools must imbue the certainty on who we are, and the function of the universities is to I would like to use this word, decolonize and de-imperialize knowledge that we learn, so that we would know our being aware of ourselves.
Right. Yeah. Prof. Ainul, if we are now looking at the Senate, yeah, if that's the answer to the debacle that we're having right here on this stage, why have we been debating about this since the last 20 years or so?
Senate members change, and Senate members don't become a Senate member by choice unless you're a professor. So that's where I think in terms of the governance, it's very important to appoint the right people in the position of the university, because these are the people who are going to be the think tank of the university when they become the Senate members. Right? And I remember what IUM did a long time ago, in which the university tried to help the young professors or those who are about to hold position or those who have held position as deans or deputy deans. They went through trainings to develop this ability to, to be strategists, for example, to strategically plan for the kuliah, for the department, for the university, and of course, for the programs and other things for the university. So with due respect to, academics, there's so many, uniform that you have to be in.
You have to wear.
Yes, in the morning you're a lecturer, you're in a lecture uniform. And then in the meetings, you're a Senate member and a faculty member or KBM, Kuliah board member. So all these things need time for, unless you have gone through the process of being in positions for many years, and then you can be, strategically planning and have that kind of thinking for the kuliah. So I think again it goes back to leadership, governance, and the ecosystem in which we can help the academicians to, together help the university for the betterment.
Yeah. Dr. Ramza, critics has it that our higher education system is highly influenced by the powers that be. It boils down to the appointment of the Senate members, the chairman of the university and whatnot. It boils down to everything. And despite the fact I was taken aback and truly appreciate criticism pointed out by our good Professor Murad just now, I would say the statement that our education system is becoming a political commodity in itself is prejudice. But that's the challenge. And would it be fair for me to say the same question to Prof. Ainul just now? Inilah isunya. Kita sudah ada otonomi tapi tidak dilaksanakan, kerana kalau dilaksanakan akan ada implikasi lain. Dan itu persepsi awam yang kata begitu. Datuk.
Probably lah, to certain degree I do agree with you lah, okay. We have that autonomy. The autonomy is already there, but people are afraid to use it because of that intimidation, the so-called intimidation. So actually it is not so much about the autonomy of the institution, but the people in that very institution itself, they refuse to use their personal autonomy because of that fear lah. Sebenarnya, ya betul LPU dipilih oleh kementerian, but they are only in charge of governance and admin. The core business is under Senate. Senate dipilih oleh university. But as I said just now, the problem is because the people in the Senate ni kan, they are afraid to use their personal autonomy because of the environment outside yang kementerian cakap ni begini-begini. And even sometimes I can see that at the Senate, the decision is always based on, oh kita tidak boleh buat macam ni sebab kementerian MQA cakap begini. But actually that is your perception lah kan. You have your own autonomy sebenarnya kalau mau pakai. Saya mau bagi tahu Tuan Syed, saya ni nampak saja muka baik, naif, suci kan. Saya ni jahat juga, brutal. Saya tidak pernah mengikut when masa saya mengajar, oh MQA required this apa semua. Kalau menyusahkan saya, no. I'm not going to follow you. Saya baca peraturan MQA. Peraturan MQA kata, this is the spirit that required you to basically to follow lah kan. The rest is up to the university, bergantung kepada kesesuaian. So saya kata saya ikut prinsip dia. Yang ini adalah kesesuaian kan. Itu tiada kena-mengena. Don't abuse MQA untuk intimidate saya. So saya selalu terlepaslah. Okay, we will bring this matter to Senate. Bawalah. Saya berhujah depan Senate tu, kan? So basically, saya mau bagi tahu bahawa the autonomy, Senate punya autonomy itu ni. Tapi we are conditioned to that kind of thinking. MQA cakap macam ni, kementerian cakap macam ni, kan? Tapi kita sendiri tidak menggali. Actually, MQA cakap apa? Kementerian mahu apa? What is the basic? As long as we the basic tu kita ni, Senat actually has the authority. Setakat menukar LO apa semua. What MQA has to do with that kan? MQA ni tiada kerja dia pergi detail semacam tu buat pening kepala. Kalau kita sendiri di MQA itu semua tu garis kasar. But when you allow MQA to detect that, sebab pegawai-pegawai kita di universiti pun lebih MQA dari MQA. That is the problem. Kan? The institutional autonomy is there. We refuse to use our personal autonomy. And I think that is the issue in university. Thank you.
Yeah, Mrs. Prabha, one pertinent issue that we have yet to address here on this stage is ranking ke tak ranking. That in itself is a debate, you know. With all due respect to URA kata tak lah, Tan Sri kata no, we're not interested. But then you still need some kind of gauge so that you know whether you are still in line to toe the line throughout the global academic quality and acknowledgement. So how do we deal with this?
It's all well and good for university systems which are far more mature than ours to say rankings does not matter. You know, so they can say that, but at the end of the day, they are still looking at, is it Harvard on top, or is it Cambridge on top, or is it Oxford on top, right? At the end of the day, there's still a bit of pride in that. But I totally agree with what Tan Sri is saying. I think we need to look at our universities in a holistic sense. Ranking is there to provide maybe some kind of guidance for students, for parents, to provide a peace of mind. All right, I'm spending this much money to put my child into a university that is very highly ranked. It does not, however, guarantee any outcomes. It does not guarantee the quality of the instruction that they're receiving, the quality of research that they're receiving, the quality of global outlook experience that a student is receiving. So we do really need to break away from this, but by and large, we're not, we're not the only country. As Malaysians, we tend to be very self-critical. We always think ours is the worst. Our education system is the worst, but we're not. People are struggling with it. UK has been struggling with it for years, but they still talk about ranking, how much there is discourse about it. But I guess the difference is the active discourse. So one of the things you see about the culture in European countries is that people talk a lot about it. There's active discourse, people debate about it. Somehow here we are held back. A lot of people are held back. We're not all as, vocal about things that we should be vocal about, because this is the future of our children, and this is the future of the future generation, and that's the future of our nation. So we do need to look beyond the confines of, this is a safe, comfortable space, and I don't want to cross that comfort zone. As leaders, we do need to cross that comfort zone if it is going to make a difference eventually for our country.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, kita tiba ke pusingan keempat. Ada? Maaf, saya tak nampak. Silakan.
Bismillah. Fantastic panelists, not too bad moderator. Gurau tuan saya. Talking about culture and also models for tertiary education, I always think that the principal roles of a tertiary education is to provide consummate educational experience. That's number one, not to provide academic qualification. That is with the assumption if you follow through the educational experience, the academic qualification will come. Because educational experience, I think, is very important. It will guide our students, our graduates for life. But if our view is to focus on academic qualification, I do not know whether that educational experience can guide them for their life. Can I get some response from the panelists, please?
For the benefit of our audience, can you please introduce yourself, sir?
My name is Zainuri Abdul Rahman.
Okay.
I'm from the Kuliah of Education.
Baik, terima kasih banyak. Sebab saya minta maaf tak nampak tadi, silakan lagi kalau dalam dewan ini ada lagi yang ingin bersuara. Kalau dia tak bersuara nanti di luar dewan dia akan berpiket. Tak ada. Dr. Ikram, okay, steady ya. Masih boleh tekan loceng lagi. Alright. Okay, I would like to give 3 minutes to each of our distinguished speakers here responding to the question being raised. And also, I would like to bring back Syamsul Amri's argument in the first session. Because one of the criticism, antara kritik terhadap penganjuran debat ini adalah it's going to be another academic pandemonium. Nothing will come out from this. But I will put that burden on the shoulders of the organizer. Because the blessing in disguise is GE15 is just around the corner. Whoever becomes number one, whether we don't know KPT, KPM to combine or not, whoever becomes the minister, hopefully we can have flex some political muscle and every party's campaigning will take the pointers from this debate, the first session and the second session, into their manifestos, hopefully, to address the prejudice. I can see Prof. Murad, we need a real huge statesman as a minister to address these prejudices. Because whoever comes from any party, suddenly you will have to deal with that kind of prejudice. Definitely, whatever you do.
Okay. Can I quickly? The education ministry cannot stand by itself.
All right.
The education, there must be a revamp of the components of the ministry. It has to be perhaps a Ministry of Education and Culture.
Okay.
We're talking about school education. That's where the prejudice comes in. In other words, we have to unlearn and we need to dismantle. We need to know what prejudice is and how we acquire prejudice, for example. Okay? So that has been around. We have a education ministry for 65 years. I think we need to change that. We need to change the component. We need to change the ministry. Not education does not exist in a vacuum. That's one. Second is for higher education. To me, it has to be Ministry of Higher Education and Research, or perhaps putting culture into the picture, because also it doesn't exist in itself. A university is part of the larger system. It's endemic to both the national and global system. And again, that's where I think the autonomy must be expressed within the university. And one of the things that is crucial to the expression of this autonomy is the curriculum. Nobody can tell the university what to teach and how to teach. The vice chancellor also cannot tell the lecturer how to teach, what to teach. So each academic, each faculty would have the authority to devise the curriculum. That's important, and that's an important feature of any university. So with regard to the question, I agree with you that consummate learning. As I've said, we come to the university to acquire certain orientation. And we compare those who come to university and those who do not enter university. They're different. The values are different, the worldviews are different. But at the same time, the universities cannot pretend to be Google. They cannot pretend to meet the demands of the market. They cannot pretend to be on top of knowledge or on top of skills. When you talk about skills and higher skills, the function is the industry to teach the employees the most advanced skills available, not the university. So again, universities must be aware that there must be a demarcation between what they can do, should do, and what the industries can do and should do.
Prof. Murad, another profound and breakthrough idea just now when you combine education with culture. Because normally when we talk about education, I think when we talk about education, what we're looking at is a school building, schools, those faculty members of the schools and also universities. But when you have culture, together with it, then you start think differently, because it has to have an outcome, it has to have an impact towards the culture at large, rather than looking at pedagogy, teaching and learning per se. But I also understand, Prof. Murad, from the point of view of those policymakers, sekarang ni pun dah 56 billion. That means Menteri Pendidikan dan Budaya will have perhaps maybe 100 billion budget. That's why the political commodity comes into the picture, because it becomes a very powerful ministry. You know, you would like to add on to that, Prof. Murad?
Yeah, I mean, I was reading, I was reading the memoir of Bernard Lewis,
Okay.
Orientalist historian in the 40s, 50s. He said that he's a Jew. He was schooled in England, and there they teach Richard the Lionheart and all those figures. In Malaysia, in our school system, who are the figures? What is our canon? Over there, everybody knows. I'm not England, but Austria or Germany. Everybody knows Hegel. Even a 10-year-old kid can talk about Hegel. That's the canon. But what do we have in our school? We ask our level 2 or 3 or 4, what is the canon? What are the source of thinking of a nation? What is the philosophy of the nation? That philosophy of the nation must be taught at primary school. Then only we build up the certainty of who we are. And this is not present in our system.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Prof. Madhya. I hope the microphone still works. Boleh masih ya?
I want to pick up on the question or the comment on students' experiences now. Well, yeah, indeed, it is very true that student experience is very important because it builds the character and the values of each individual student after they've completed the higher education. But the thing is, I think what is happening in this part of the world, in Malaysia, is that higher education at one point has been so much industry driven, in such that we are preparing, the major focus is to prepare our students for the industry. But we know very well when we look at the Falsafah Pendidikan as well as the blueprint, that is only half the job of the higher education, because the other half of the job is to develop the person, because that person is going to be everywhere, in every part of the society. So that's where we differ, for example, from higher education in America, for example. Theirs is a very liberal education, in which students experience, if you're in social science, you have to do some sciences. If you're in sciences, you have to do some in social sciences, some courses in social sciences. You have to know political science. There are a few political science courses that you have to take. But I'm not in that area. I don't want to learn. But this is to prepare the graduates with all the experiences that they need in order to function in the society later. Because they will have to be taking care of the law and politics and all those things. So that is where I think we have to revisit. And this is where I also agree with one of the comments earlier, that actually we should be sitting down, not with just academicians, but people from the ministry and probably different sectors in the government to be here, because this is everybody's business. We're contributing, the people who will be, in the different sectors of the society. So if there should be another round of Edu-Action, I think we should get all these people sit down in this hall together and listen to all these arguments and issues raised.
Yeah. Edu-Action Session 3 coming up soon, immediately after the general election, together with the new minister, inshallah, hopefully. Datuk Dr. Ramza, he can help, Datuk Zazri, Dr. Ramza can help in flexing some political muscle to get.
New minister sensitive tu Nampak sangat tidak suka dengan minister sekarang. Okay, anyway, yeah, I totally agree that education should be experience, and whatever qualification that should be only the byproduct lah. Saya ni peminat Rafael Nadal tahu, Rafael Nadal, pemain tenis terbaik di dunia. Of course you can argue Novak lah, Roger. Come on. Rafael Nadal ada 21 Grand Slam dan dia ada pingat emas Olimpik. Yang dua orang tu tidak ada, they only have 20 kan. But you see what is the difference between Rafael Nadal, Novak and Roger. Roger ni dengan Novak ni kalau dulu di interview, how do you feel when you become the number one player? Ditanya masa diorang first time dapat pemain nombor 1. Oh, this is something I have been dreaming this since bila-bila lah apa semua. It is my daripada dulu lagi ambition. I really want to be number one because whatever. Rafael Nadal bila ditanya kali pertama nombor 1 dia kata, oh, I don't even think about it actually, dia kata. Sebab my only concern is to have passion of that sport. My motivation every single day is to try to improve my love to the sport and to make sure that I have this passion to go to the court. Dia kata. Kan? So it is not about winning. Dia kata it is not about winning. It's not about winning Grand Slam. It is not about being number 2, number 1. But it is about make sure that my love and passion for the sport sustain. Dia cakap, I don't mind if I become the number 2 forever or always behind Roger Federer. Dia kata, betul, Rafael Nadal cakap macam tu. So for me, itulah. So when you have passion for what you are doing, and then the rest will come, definitely. So it's same like education kan. If you really put your love into it, and then qualification, whatever, apa semua tu will come. And it really comes in a big way that really can impact you as a person. So, itu saya punya pandangan lah.
Terima kasih. Silakan, Mrs. Prabha.
Yeah. So that question was a loaded question because there are so many players and so many customers of this story, right? Are parents going to be happy with just the experience, or are parents only interested in that degree? Then you come to the students. What can they show for that experience if they can't get a job? Or is only the degree and the CGPA going to get them a job? So I think at the end of the day, there has to be alignment in thinking, alignment in how we approach this. Is it the experience or is it the degree? Let's take a step back of that question. What happened in the last 2 years? We had 2-3 cohorts of students who did not potentially have any experience because universities were struggling to pivot into online and to get things sorted on teaching and learning and examination, assessment and evaluation. Did all these students now lose out on that experience and just come out with a paper qualification? If so, then how are we going to help them get that experience? How are we going to avert this kind of problems in future? I totally agree. The experience is really important. I think MOHE now has, they're talking about the Excel framework and experiential learning and really embedding that whole experience into the curriculum of the university. But I think as universities, we need to make sure we don't look at it as, okay, this is another instruction from MOHE that we need to fulfill. We need to see how we can embrace that for the benefit of the institution so that students then can use that experiential learning. Even if they were doing it completely online, for whatever reason, God forbid, they can still embrace that experiential learning and take that with them to whatever they do. And then you got to think about industry and parents, right? So there are so many players. I think that can be an entire topic in itself on how you're going to consult all these people and get everyone on the same page to agree that, yes, it is that whole embodiment of experience that's the most important thing and not just that CGPA or that piece of paper.
Yeah. Tuan-tuan, I don't have enough acumen before me to sum up or even craft a good conclusion for these 2 huge sessions. But there is one thing for sure that I would like to share with you. When we were, I'm using tools provided by Stephen Covey. He said, when you want to do changes meagerly, small changes, then you change the way how you do things. But if you want to manifest a bigger kind of change, you have to change the way how you look at things. And that's the thing that I noticed today. Normally when we talk about education, because it becomes a Ministry of Education and Higher Education, Bila kita tengok Kementerian Pengajian Tinggi, we're looking at the universities, we're looking at the institute, we're looking at the building and the people, sekolah, pendidikan. But now I see a different perspective. I totally agree. If we look at Kementerian Pendidikan dan Budaya, suddenly it becomes something bigger. You have to affect something higher than just teaching and learning. You will affect the culture as a whole, as a nation, because you are building a culture. That in itself is a change in perspective. Well, how you go about in doing it will be something else. Suruhanjaya diraja ke, budget sebesar mana ke, that kind of debate will come later. But we have to look at education differently because the world is changing. So long as you look at, oh, we need so many engineers, you need so many teachers, then you are trapped in that industry-driven dialogue. So perhaps maybe that's the biggest takeaway, at least at my personal level, change the way how we debate about education rather than looking at it mechanically, operationally. We have to look at education as something larger. It's about culture.
I'd like to interject. Yeah. Next cabinet, they have to change the Ministry of Higher Education and Science.
And science. Sekali lah. Dr. Ramzah Dambul will make a comeback. InsyaAllah. Tak tahulah whether ideas or not. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a big round of applause to all our 4 panelists here. It has been a very intriguing session for me. Thank you very much again, Tan Sri, for putting me here right on stage. I really learn a lot dan ini satu learning curve yang sangat curam. Nak sebut apa curam? Steep. Curam. Terima kasih dan saya mohon maaf atas kesempatan salah silap di sana sini. Saya kembalikan majlis kepada Idayu. Silakan.
Thank you.